Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. The man who rules the world and the angel of darkness take on a horde of demons in this inaugural John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, A Conversation with Death for 99 cents on Kindle or in paperback today. I was watching the Channel 11 news on Saturday night, and they ran a story talking about how former Attorney General Eric Holder was pondering running for president of the United States. And after watching that story talking about former Attorney General Eric Holder pondering running for president of these United States, I have to say this. Eric Holder needs to sit his ass down. And the reason why he needs to sit down is because, based on his track record, he shows that he is not qualified to be the president of these United States. When you look at the track record of former Attorney General Eric Holder, it's the track record of a coward. Because when your former Attorney General Eric Holder under President Barack Obama had the power to do something about George Zimmerman, the Darren Wilson, the cop who killed Tamir Rice, and Officer Daniel Pantaleo who choked out Eric Garner, your former Attorney General Eric Holder, instead of filing federal civil rights charges against all of these men, what he did was tendered his resignation and then left the Attorney General's office. And with him being a complete coward on civil rights and race relations, that's one of the reasons why race relations here in America have completely deteriorated. They have completely deteriorated due to Eric Holder's weak and ineffective leadership in the Attorney General's office. Because again, your Eric Holder, as the first black Attorney General, had the power to do something about George Zimmerman. And I believe if your Attorney General Eric Holder had done something about George Zimmerman, we would not have Donald Trump in the Oval Office right now. Because if it wasn't for this Eric Holder being a coward on George Zimmerman, what would have happened was black folks would have set a hard boundary on race relations, and that hard boundary would have let George Zimmerman and those who were emboldened and supported George Zimmerman know where the line was on race relations here in America. But because your Attorney General Eric Holder had no backbone and had no testicles, what happened was we saw many of these racists get emboldened because he did absolutely nothing about George Zimmerman. And this man who did nothing about George Zimmerman, who did nothing about Darren Wilson, who did nothing about the cop who murdered Tamir Rice, who did nothing about Daniel Pantaleo, has the audacity to come out here and talk about he wants to run for the presidency of this United States. Well, I believe your Attorney General Eric Holder wouldn't even get 2 percentage points in a primary once other candidates started beating him up on his track record. Yes, your Attorney General Eric Holder was the first black Attorney General, but he was a weak and ineffective Attorney General, and he was one of the core reasons why a significant majority, not a large majority, but a significant majority of black men stayed home on Election Day in 2016. Because if it was not for Eric Holder's track record of being weak and ineffective on civil rights for black men, those black men would have had an incentive to go out here and vote for your Hillary Clinton, like many blacks used to do, voting straight down that Democratic ticket. But because your Eric Holder was a coward and resigned his office, and then Barack Obama passed the baton on to Loretta Lynch, who did just as much of nothing as Eric Holder, what happened was, again, race relations deteriorated here in America, And the American people got so polarized to the point where Donald Trump got elected as president of these United States. And again, it takes a lot of audacity and a lot of nerve for this guy to come out here and talk about he's pondering running for the presidency when he didn't have the courage to be the type of attorney general who would stand up for the principles of the United States Constitution. Because an attorney general who would have stood up for the principles of the United States Constitution would have filed civil rights charges against George Zimmerman, would have filed civil rights charges against Darren Wilson, would have filed civil rights charges against the cop who murdered Tamir Rice, and would have filed civil rights charges against Daniel Pantaleo for choking out Eric Garner, instead of resigning and then having Loretta Lynch run out the clock. And that shows us how much of a punk your Eric Holder was, that he's supposed to be a black man, a supposed leader in the black community, and he resigns his position and abdicates his power, and then Barack Obama appoints a black woman who runs the clock out. And that shows us how little many of these so-called black leaders care about the black community and how little they care about black race relations. When you look at your Attorney General Eric Holder, I clearly see someone who is clearly not qualified to be the president of these United States, and I have to say, someone who really should have their black man card completely revoked, because he does not stand for the principles of black manhood, black masculinity, or black leadership, because anyone who would have a position of power like that and then abdicate when it's time to take some constructive action that would be effective towards civil rights, that's someone, I believe, that clearly isn't qualified to even be a part of the black community or even a discussion on black issues. When your Eric Holder resigned his position, he showed us how weak of a man he was, and how he clearly, if he could not stand the heat of the pressure of being the first black attorney general, then there's no way anyone should even think about considering making him the second black president of the United States, or even consider him as a candidate for the second black president of the United States. When I look at your Eric Holder, I see nothing more than a punk. I see nothing more than a coward, and I see someone who, again, has great audacity and great nerve to sit here and talk about pondering running against Donald Trump, when it was all of his actions that led to Donald Trump being the president of the United States right now. We would not have Donald Trump polarizing people and having people be in this racial tension and participating in more racial violence like they have been right now if Eric Holder had the backbone and the stones to lay that hard boundary in the face of many of those white racists who were behind George Zimmerman back in 2011, I believe, or 2012. If he had the backbone back then, we wouldn't have Donald Trump in the White House right now. And for this man to sit there and say he wants to run for president in 2020, that again takes a lot of audacity. And as I see it, this is a candidate black people should not consider at all, because he clearly shows he's not interested in the best interests of the black community. He's an opportunist looking to play the black card in the hopes of getting elected. But he's someone who, again, clearly is grossly unqualified to be the president of these United States, because if you cannot take the lead when it's hard, then we can't expect you to take of an office like Attorney General, then we cannot expect you to take the lead of a position like President of the United States. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.